Welcome to Education Forum. I'm Herman Badillo, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. The improvement of education affects all New Yorkers. This program will focus on the key educational issues and challenges before us all. My guest today is Ninfa Segarra, who is the Deputy Mayor for Education and Human Services, but who also is a member of the Board of Education of the City of New York, appointed by Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, and she has been serving in that capacity for over 6 years. Welcome, Ninfa.
Thank you, Herman.
And with all the problems that you have at the Board of Education, what would you say is the biggest problem that you have right now?
I think it's continuing to explain the establishment of standards that we've set up for the school system now, and really helping parents understand why promotional policy that the board created is the critical piece to make sure our educational system works for all children.
Okay, now up to now, the policy has been one of social promotion.
Absolutely.
Which means that if you did your work, you passed, and if you didn't, you passed, you were promoted for social reasons.
Yeah, and
what is the new policy, and when is it going to take effect?
It's taken effect already this September. We experimented with it last year. And what it does is it lets parents know year by year what children should be learning and what levels of reading and writing they need to achieve and other things. And as a result of passing certain standards each year, that child is then ready for the next year. And what it really is providing truth in advertising for parents. It's letting them know what they should expect.
So instead of social promotion, you're now going to have educational promotion.
That's right.
Now that began this September.
That's right.
But it really will take effect next June when the scores go out, right?
Well, in September we let everyone know what's going to happen that year, because the most important thing is to start educating parents so they know what to expect, and children. Because this is designed really to make the system accountable, not to punish children. That's the first premise of it. So what you do is make sure everyone understands what's expected of them.
Now this policy is applying beginning in what grade?
It begins in the first grade up.
First grade all to the 12th grade.
All the way through high school.
Okay, now Chancellor Crew has said that he expects that next June, maybe 300,000 and more students would not have been able to perform up to grade level. And then what happens?
Then what happens is we've set up summer school for them, mandatory, where they will be assisted in trying to reach the standard. And you don't do it the same way if you've not worked well during the school year, you don't try to recreate the same disaster in the summer. The idea is in the summer to have a new set of teachers, a new way of working closer in contact with children and helping them achieve the standard. The most important thing that we need to understand is that children go through school once in their life, and you have to catch them when they have a problem early. You need to assist them and raise them to a standard. To push them on, as you told us for so many years, was and just let them be promoted is one of the worst disasters that could happen to a child.
I agree. We have to find out what is going on, and the best way is to have standards beginning, as you say, in the first grade. Now, let's assume next year 300,000 students are not able to meet the standards for passing on. And then they go to summer school, and let's say 200,000 are able to meet the standard,
That's right.
but 100,000 are not. What happens to those 100,000?
They have to stay behind.
And they get the same grade repeated again?
They get the same grade repeated, but again, the idea is not to recreate the same disaster for them. So then you have to look at those children individually. You have to determine what kind of classroom setting they need. Is there a change of teacher they need? There are things to look at child by child. And we did that to some extent this past summer when we worked with some of the children. We have to get better at that. But the idea is, again, to educate parents ahead of time. So one of the things the Chancellor did, which is very good, is to provide some materials we're giving out this week when parents come in to talk to teachers that let them know what they should be expecting for their child, grade by grade. It's been done first for the elementary schools. Yes. When you start educating parents and start letting them know what to expect, I think that really helps in preparing for what the parents should expect for that school year, and then whether or not their child gets left back and why.
As you know, my wife is a teacher in the 7th grade, and she brought home last week the pamphlets
Yep.
that say what the standards are for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I would suggest to parents who have any children at all in the public school system, they should look at that material because it spells out what is expected in the individual grades,
Yeah.
like number of books that the student is required to read, the things that they're supposed to learn. And this year, the parents should look at that and check with the teachers, because if the students don't meet those standards, they'll be left back.
Yeah, and it really is sad when a child ends up in an 8th grade and can't read. And the only way for us to prevent that is to start early and hold standards. Because if we start creating a situation where we say, well, you have to meet these standards, but we'll let you pass anyway, then we're going to keep developing a group of youngsters that don't have the basic skills they need to learn. Then in the higher grades, when we have youngsters in high school, we have to do it there too. We can't just continue to let youngsters flow through our system. It's unfair to them. It
Right.
really is.
Now, this elimination of the policy of social promotion was voted upon by the board, right?
Absolutely.
And it was voted upon 6-1.
Yes.
So therefore, it doesn't matter who the chancellor may be. In other words, this is now the policy of the board. I just want to bring that out because there's some talk about the future of Chancellor Crew. But regardless of whether Crew stays, which I hope he will do, or he doesn't, that will be the policy. So nobody should have any doubts that this is what's going to happen.
Herman, I think in the 10 years I've served on the board, this is the most important decision the board has ever made, because it is the rock bottom standard for the entire system. It doesn't matter who's chancellor, it doesn't matter who's a board member, it doesn't matter who's the mayor. This is a standard that will hold the system honest and will make sure that we provide for youngsters what they really need. And again, I think it's the most critical decision that I've been a part of at the board for over 10 years.
Yeah, this is the future. It's going to be that way, and because so many things happen, and then people change their minds. I just want to emphasize it. I've been fighting to get this approved for a long time.
Oh,
and I hope it's a permanent thing.
You were a lonely voice for a while, and I'm glad that we've all paid attention and then done something that's so critical for the educational system, because as you know, my own 2 children are in the public school system.
Now, the next problem is the teachers, because you may have seen, I'm sure you know, that there was a report issued recently that pointed out that New York City teachers have failed the exam, the teacher's exam, more often than teachers from the suburbs, and pointed out that the teachers in the city may not be as qualified as the teachers in the suburbs. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the facts are true. There's no denying the fact that we have both a shortage of teachers and a shortage of adequate teachers. I think the controversy is on the solution. Some will say that the solution and the sole solution is just increase the salaries, that'll do it. There's no one solution to this. There are a number of them.
Well, increasing the salaries wouldn't change the fact that we at the City University have not been doing a good job of training teachers. You may know, sure you know, that at City College we've had maybe 60% of the teachers who got a degree in education not pass the teacher's exam in English.
That's right.
And I've asked the new chancellor, Matthew Goldstein, to revise our whole curriculum at all of the city colleges to ensure that nobody gets a diploma unless they can pass the teacher's exam.
Yeah, I mean, part of what we need to do is creating the pool of people, and then doing the proper training of those individuals, and then doing some things about salaries. Salaries are not, it's not that it's not an issue, it's how you resolve it. And as you've said, in part of creating the pool is making the education, teaching a profession that people want to go into. And part of that we've done now by establishing standards that people will know they're working on, by improving the conditions of our building, by making our schools safer. You have to create an environment both for the youngsters and the teachers that they want to be there. Then what you do is make sure that you've created that pool, that you train them properly. And the CUNY system is absolutely critical for the public school system. It's where we get our teachers.
Let me get to one aspect of training which is controversial. In the past, a teacher could become a teacher if they had the degree in education.
Right.
But even if they could teach history, for example, even if they never studied history. Now there's a new movement that says that in order to be a teacher, you should have majored in history or English or math or whatever it was that you're going to teach. What's your reaction to that?
My reaction is you need some basic skills that will help you teach. And then if you have a proper education, that is a really global education in your college career, as many of us did have and should continue to have, you're able to teach a number of subjects in different areas. Building a specialty in any career is always a positive thing, but it's not the most instrumental thing. What we need is a group, a core group of individuals who want to teach and who are given basic skills to get into the classroom and do it. And then are put in an environment where they are mentored and that they are followed through and supervised in a way that they know what they can do in that classroom and have the support to do it in the classroom. And then what you need to do is make sure that those that teach and are good are rewarded, and those that should not be with our children in the classroom are removed. So part of it is the issue of differential pay for individuals, so that those that are good are rewarded and become master teachers in some regard, and those that shouldn't be in the system can be easily removed from the system, so that the core group of people that are left behind are a group of true professionals who you reinforce that teaching is an honorable and wonderful profession and should be rewarded for doing a good job.
Okay, but part of what you said sounds difficult with the concept of teacher tenure. How are you going to remove some of the teachers if you have teacher tenure?
Well, we're currently dealing with the issue of principal tenure, and we've made it very clear, the board, the city, and everyone is unified on it, that principal tenure has to be removed and some other set of standards have to be put in place.
Okay, let's stop at principal tenure.
Yep.
What is the reaction of the Council of Supervisors?
Oh, they're hysterical about it.
So therefore, the negotiations have not been concluded.
But we're going to win them, and we're going to win them because it's a principle that's instrumental to making sure that in the future there are a group of managers in the system who can really help direct the school system.
Are there other cities where principal tenure has been eliminated?
Absolutely, and it doesn't mean that we are removing due process rights. There is a way of protecting individuals, and they should be protected in some way should charges be brought against them. And there's a due process procedure we can put in place.
So what would happen? The principal would get, say, a 3-year contract? Or?
The idea that's being put on the table is the idea of a contract for a certain amount of years with certain evaluations done, that if an evaluation becomes negative, that person is removed.
And who would evaluate? The chancellor or the local school board?
The superintendent who is now responsible for their district. I mean, one of the things that's been done to this system is the superintendents now are being held accountable. And as you know, the chancellor removed a number of superintendents when they didn't perform up to par. They have to have the ability to have their core group of managers, which are principals, be able to respond to them, because if not, the superintendent is not able to produce the kind of results, which is children should be learning, and children should be taught in a proper way, and children should have a wonderful creative environment. These are the individuals that are responsible for creating that.
When are the negotiations going to be completed, you know?
When the principals understand that their cause is lost and that there is a higher principle they should be attending to, which is the fact that they should be held accountable for what happens in their classrooms, and that they don't have a right to a lifelong job, that this school system is for children. It's not to give them job security. And when they start to understand that, and I think a number of principals do, I think unfortunately perhaps the leadership is not in tune as well with its membership, but the principals I talk to understand that they no longer have a right to this lifelong tenure, and that there are ways of both giving them the protection they need as an employee, but at the same time honoring the higher principle, which is the school system was designed for children to learn, to prepare them for the future, not to do job protection.
Okay, we'll be back after these announcements.
Do you think you have the power to change the world?
I can change the world one child at a time.
I know I can make a difference in those children's lives.
I teach.
I teach.
Yes, they're teachers, but to the kids they reach, they're heroes.
I teach.
Do you have the power to wake up young minds, to be someone's hero? Teach to make an impact on our future. Call 1-800-45-TEACH. Be a teacher. Be a hero.
We're back today with Ninfa Segarra, Deputy Mayor for Education and Human Services, and also a member of the Board of Education of the City of New York. Ninfa, before the break, you were talking about a differential that might be established for teachers. How would that come about?
It's similar to what we've just done in city government with our managers, where instead of doing an across-the-board raise, we did 0, 4.75, 6.25. And managers had to make decisions among their workforce which ones got what raise. And you do it based on, are they good employees? Are they wonderful employees? And the idea is to really reinforce that when you've done a good job, when you've done the extra mile, you should get an extra benefit.
And this would happen with teachers, and who would make the judgment? The principal?
The principal, managers. There's sometimes in some schools you have interim managers that make those decisions. I mean, I know this is very controversial, but it really makes some very basic sense.
Now, this is just a proposal. It hasn't been
This is a
approved.
proposal. This is, as you know, we will be starting new negotiations with our unions, and one of them is with the
When will that happen?
Well, it all depends when they're willing to come to the table. I'm sure the mayor and the city would be willing to come to the table immediately and start discussions. It's a partnership.
Any idea what the tentative reaction of Randy Weingarten might be?
I'm sure that the teachers union will not like it. They would prefer to have something that's across the board, that they feel all their employees should benefit from whatever increases are done. But I think the next negotiation is going to be very different, and we're showing it by how we're handling currently the principals.
Now again, is there any city where this
Of course, there are other parts of the country where this has been done. It always is controversial because part of it is you force then real evaluation of teacher performance. You really then stop just looking at the child. I mean, we've done standards, promotional standards, where the child now is graded. It would be a very unfair system if those that are responsible for helping that child get there, if you don't figure out whether or not they're up to par. That includes teachers, it includes principals, it includes superintendents, it includes chancellors. And we've just evaluated him. So everyone through the system has to be held accountable to make sure that child is being given the kind of assistance he or she needs to make sure they're ready for the future.
What do you do about the problem of teacher transfers? As you know, we've had studies over the years going back to United Bronx Parents and Evelina Antonetti and Ellen Lurie. They made a study when I was president of the Bronx that indicated that the teachers in the wealthier areas of the Bronx, like Riverdale, the schools had a much higher budget than the schools in the South Bronx, and that the reason for that is that the older teachers who had a higher salary were able to transfer out of the South Bronx, and that the South Bronx always ended up getting the newer teachers who were the least experienced. Is anything going to be done about that?
We've already started to do something about that without having to take away seniority rights. And that's the model of the Chancellor's District and the idea of incentive pay. The Chancellor has set up that in districts in the city that some of us are familiar with, where we have very difficult schools, they're called the SIR schools, the schools that are under supervision by the state, that if you go to some of those schools to teach, you can get an incentive pay, an additional pay for going there. It's a way of attracting and keeping.
Now that's in effect now.
That's in effect now.
And
in
are
a number.
teachers taking advantage of
Some
that?
did, some didn't. I think part of it was that we didn't, when it was put out, the plan wasn't with enough time to do the transfers. Part of it is also that there's not one thing that'll attract a teacher to a very difficult setting. They have to feel that there's going to be a real energy in these schools, that it's really going to be recreated. So I think part of it is just getting people to understand the kind of changes that are occurring in some of our SIR schools. One of the brilliant things the Chancellor did do was create a Chancellor's District, an area where he took schools that are very difficult
That
and gave
takes
them
it away
special
from the community superintendent.
pulled them out of school districts, said, I'm going to take over these schools. You're telling me you can't do anything with them. Well, I'm going to show you that if you pay attention, if you develop a plan, and if you concentrate on something, you can recreate a school. You can make it better. I'm going to show you you can do it. You're telling me you can't, I'll prove it to you. And we've done it. And a number of those schools some have gotten off the SIR list. They're showing great progress. So an added tool to that was this attraction for teachers. Again, with teachers, you need to create a setting where they'll want to teach. and then you need to hold them accountable once they're there. And part of creating those settings are having managers that really will manage, of doing physical plan changes, and of creating a curriculum and a standard that people know they're going to live by.
Now let me talk about the City University, because as you know, most of our students at the City University come from the public school system.
That's right.
And unfortunately, a very large percentage of them need remedial education because they, even though they have a high school diploma, they're not reading, writing, and doing arithmetic at 12th grade levels. We don't get, unfortunately, the students from Bronx Science or Stuyvesant, but in the better schools, we get them from the average schools. So we have a high percentage of remedial education that is required at the community colleges and the senior colleges. One of the things that I proposed is a program called College Now,
Yes.
where we can go back into the high schools, but expanding it to go test the students and work with the students beginning in the 9th grade, so that we work with them at the City University with the teachers in the 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, so that we can help ensure that they don't need all the remedial assistance when they go in. We want to do that for every high school in the city.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, I think one of the worst frauds we committed on young people was to give them a degree that was worthless. And that's a responsibility of the New York City public school system, and I think that is one of the worst crimes we've committed for young people. I'm 17, 18 years old, and I graduate from X high school, and I think I'm ready, and I apply to CUNY. No, everyone's told me I'm ready. I mean, I'm under the illusion that I'm ready.
Well, talk
That's
to students
horrible.
at Borough Manhattan Community College who were furious because they thought they had a real high school diploma. Then when they came in, they were told they have to take a lot of courses, which, by the way, was very expensive because they use up their tuition assistance program, taking remedial education. So when they finish with the remedial education, they don't have enough money to pay for the regular college courses.
So that's the first thing. And I think both in the CUNY system and the public school system, our recognition of our responsibility to set up standards and help those young people get a real education was the first step. The next is we've started, again, the public school system, we got to start at first point, so grade first and up. Then you have the reality that we have high school students who have gone through our system who were not given a proper education. The more intervention we can do to prepare them, to make sure that they both get a proper high school education and know what to reach for. I think what a program at College Now has done for young people that I've met that are in it is given them a real sense of reality and an objective, because then they know they're working towards something very specific. There's a goal at the end, and they have an avenue to get there. And it really provides a safety net for them and prepares for the CUNY system an adequate candidate and helps a young person with a real road to the CUNY system in a very real way.
I think the best thing about College Now, which I expect will happen even more, is it will reduce the dropout rate from high school.
Absolutely.
Because we have a very high dropout rate, especially in the Black and Latino communities. And if we start working with the kids in the 9th grade, a huge percentage of them drop out in the 10th or 11th grade, we could prevent the dropout and encourage them to go on to college.
Yeah.
I think that would really enlarge the student body at the City University.
And I think an important note in this plan is the recognition that CUNY and the Board of Ed are interdependent, and not just interdependent, but can really be a resource to each other. Because the board is, New York City Board of Education, acknowledging that it has some high school students they need help with. CUNY is saying, you know what, they're going to come here. Instead of us waiting till they get here, let's start earlier to work together. I think that is a wonderful model in government, to have two critical agencies acknowledging their liability, which is that they've not done well for these young people, but more importantly, working together and uniting their resources to show that if they work together, they can help young people. And too many times people say what you need is more money, put more money in the pot. Many times what you need is to coordinate the resources you have, work together, and show the young people that adults can do it, and that adults can create plans for them, and that adults can create safety nets for them. And then they'll
and that it's all
make the
one
steps.
system. It really should be the K through 16.
That's right.
From kindergarten all the way to not only college but graduate school, because increasingly a high school diploma is worthless, and even a college diploma requires much more if we're going to move ahead.
And it shows we really care.
Yeah.
When we really put in a plan in place where we say to a young person, look, this is what's expected of you, but this is the resources I'm giving you to get there. Young people meet the test. I have never had a fear that young people in our school system can't be the best in the country, if not the world. We just needed to make sure we taught them, showed them what's expected of them, and then we as adults have to put the resources in place. They will meet the test. I have no fears of that whatsoever.
That's the view that I have, that if we have standards, people from any background will be able to meet them because they met them before. We
That's
had
right.
very high standards at one point. We accomplished a great deal. People who also had who were poor, who had all kinds of problems, they were able to move ahead. And I know that the failure to have standards is what has created some problems, but I think as we go ahead and impose standards, that the students will be able to meet them.
Yeah, and we have to make sure as adults, again, and I think we're doing it, that we provide the resources for them, the good teachers for them, the good managers and supervisors for them, and role models for them, and they will meet it. New York City has 1 million wonderful, beautiful children in our school system. Each and every one of them can be an extraordinary individual in the future. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we provide them the environment to do that.
That certainly is what I hope will happen. Thank you for being with us today.
Gracias.
You can reach us by email at our website, www.cunytv.cuny.edu, or write to us at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016. We look forward to hearing from you.